if you're having someone call you and you answer the phone and it's someone from a different country and you can tell right off the bat, you're automatically going to assume that, oh, this is just, this is just some scam company or something like that. So people hang up the phone all the time.
From St. George, Utah, I want to invite onto the podcast Jeremy Bourgeois. Jeremy, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Brent. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
This is exciting. First of all, it is we're recording this on Veterans Day. So thank you for your service. I know that you are a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. So thank you for your service. And tell me about it. Tell me about going from the Marines to your real estate journey.
Yeah, so I was on my last year in the Marines. I'd made the decision that I wasn't going to stay in and keep signing on. And I didn't really know what to do next. So I went home on leave for, I think, the last time. And I had a good friend there he was starting to get into real estate. And he was really excited about it. It made me really excited too. Just seeing how much you could learn and how much you could make and grow personally just through doing that. So I went all in. In my last year that I was in, I spent basically just saving every penny that I could, picking up side hustles. I did like Uber Eats, DoorDash, whenever I wasn't on duty. I was doing stuff like that. And just kind of prepared that whole first year. And as soon as I got out, I bought my first fourplex, did a house hack, and I got right into wholesaling. So at the same time, did those two things. And that was right in the beginning of 2020.
So you have a buddy that's doing real estate. You're looking to your future. Did you read any books? Did you get into any mentorship programs or YouTube channels or podcasts or any of that? Like what was the first steps to keep throwing fuel on the fire of your real estate dreams, essentially?
Yeah, well, it was crazy because it was like a light switch flicked in my head. And as soon as I figured out I was going to do this, and it wasn't just real estate, it was personal development too. So I really wanted to improve myself because, my friend, he was putting me onto the right kind of stuff. Jim Rohn, and I listened to a lot of Jim Rohn. I listened to, I think, a Bigger Pockets podcast every single day. I was reading every day. And these are all habits that I basically just inserted into my life all at once. And I cut out some bad ones too. I was smoking a pack a day of cigarettes. I quit that, cold turkey. And I just made all these big changes at once. And that's kind of how I got started, was just by consuming content. And I still do that. I mean, I still read every day. Pretty shortly afterwards, I was like, all right, I'm going to invest into my education. So that's when I joined the Rhino Tribe. I think that was about 6 months or so after I got out of the Marine Corps, and it was super helpful for me to get that education. And I think by investing in my education, I was really able to hit the gas on it, because as soon as you do that, you're invested in it. And once you're invested in it, then it's a lot easier for you to take off.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you're going to pay attention to where you want to get a return on your time and your efforts. And certainly, if you're spending money on something, you want to make sure that you're getting that back and taking it seriously. Right. And
Absolutely.
So that's fantastic. Now, I always wonder about this, because I think back to when I was given Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2000 as a graduation gift. And I remember reading it and I was like, okay, I get it. I need to buy and own properties. I need to find really good deals, and I need to raise funds, and I need to be able to network with people that already had the money, and then I could find the deals, and then we were joint venture or partner. I didn't even know what a joint venture was. It was so foreign to me. So when you first got into it, were you like, okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my VA loan. I'm going to buy a fourplex. That's going to be my first, investment property. And then I'm going to, see which way that this pulls me. You know what I mean? Because there's so many opportunities. You can do fix and flip. You can start building your portfolio. You can learn creative finance. You can learn how to assign the deals. You can become a real estate agent. You could get into mortgages and lending and all these other different avenues. So how did you know to find wholesaling? Because you're a lot smarter than I was. It took me like 12 years to figure it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I honestly, I can lean on bigger pockets for that. It exposed me because I was listening to literally as one episode a day for for about a year. So doing that exposed me to all these different strategies, and honestly, it made my head spin a little bit. I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so much that I could do, and that's what I really liked about it is that I could take a different direction with it. I could always be learning something new because there's so much out there when you get into real estate. But I saw that the easiest, as far as buying property goes, the easiest way is to use one of those very low down payment options. So I actually didn't use my VA loan. I used an FHA loan because I bought it with the same guy who put me on to real estate in general. He was looking for deals before I was. And he said, hey, I found this fourplex, but I can't get the financing for it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll help you out. Let's just go in on it together. And it was a great deal. But that was the lowest barrier to entry money wise. And then also wholesaling was too. So I didn't have a ton of money saved in the bank at that point. The military doesn't pay that much. So I basically I really leaned into wholesaling when I got back because I had another partner who he had just started, another friend who had just started to market to off market properties, and he's like, you want to just do this with me? So I did that at the same time as I was getting my first rental property, and I was actually helping him with the flip at the same time too, just for free labor. But I kind of did a little bit of everything at once. I just really wanted to learn.
That's awesome. And maybe you can educate me because I'm not sure. Can you buy a fourplex with a VA loan, or does it have to be FHA?
No, you definitely can.
Awesome.
Yeah, I used my VA loan last year, so it's an incredible loan program, and it's very, very similar to the FHA loan, but you can put 0% down instead of 3.5%. So
yeah, and will you educate everybody that's just new to our world? What does house hacking mean?
Yeah, so house hacking is where you buy you either buy a single family and you live in one bedroom and rent out the other bedrooms, or you buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex and you live in one unit and you rent out the rest of them. And you can only do it up to 4 units because if you're house hacking with using a government-backed FHA or VA loan, which is typically what people do because it's very, very little out of pocket. You can use that and you can completely take out your biggest expense, right? Which is either your rent or your mortgage payment by offsetting it with rents from the other units or bedrooms.
Yeah. Every time I hear about house hacking, I remember reading a book on Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when he was coming up in his bodybuilding career, he would buy fourplexes in California, I think maybe Venice, wherever Muscle Beach is. And he would rent out to his other buddies all the other units and live basically for free because he kept saving his money. Now, obviously, he became, this big blockbuster superstar. So, it's a drop in the bucket. But he always stayed as a real estate investor and always thought it was really, really, really smart to invest in real estate, especially multifamily. So every time I hear house hacking, I think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is pretty cool because it is a strategy that has been effective for forever. And really good when you're getting started. It gives you great property management experience, and usually you can get into those properties if you're using FHA and or a VA loan with 0 to 3% down, which is really pretty cool. So I think that is awesome. You took action right away, and then you started going, okay, I've got this property here that's covering my expenses. Now I need to increase my income, and I think that's that's the toughest part for people starting in this business, Jeremy, especially if you're starting coming in and it's a part-time hustle, or you're just kind of looking at it as it's kind of a hobby. You're interested in it, but you're more like, I just want to own rental properties. And that's good, but the average down payment on a rental property is $50,000. I mean, once you use your VA and once you use your FHA and you're not living in one of those units, you got to put 20 to 25% down for investment properties to get conventional financing. So a lot of people just don't have the excess income left over after paying their bills
Right.
and their expenses and kids and insurance and their housing and everything else to be able to buy properties consistently. So you have to increase your income, your earned income. And that's where we come in. That's where wholesaling comes in. That's where learning to find deals and assign them to other people to get the cash cycle going a lot faster, to increase the income so that we can then go buy the rental properties. Is that your plan?
Oh, absolutely. And it took me a really long time to figure out that lesson, by the way, that increasing your active income is so important. If you're planning on building a big portfolio of real estate, you need to be making a good amount of money. And through wholesaling, you can do that, you know?
Yep.
It took me a while to figure that one out, though.
Well, listen, you have two paths, and I love this conversation. I love where this podcast is going. So you got two paths. You can raise funds, right? You can raise funds once you find a deal, and you can take that down. You can partner with people, and now you own that property, or you could find great deals and sell those deals to somebody else that wants to do a fix and flip, wants to add it to their portfolio. Maybe they already have their money raised, or they have high income, or they just have a nest egg sitting around that they could buy these properties, and you can make your money there, where now it's your money and you can be the sole buyer of these properties. So you have two paths. Go and squat up with people and find the deals and keep them long term and kind of make that slow money, or go out, find the deals, sell those deals, make bigger chunks of money faster, but you only get paid once. So what do you want to do? That's the crossroads that we face when we're starting in this business.
Absolutely. And you know, what I really like about wholesaling, I think my favorite part about wholesaling in general is not the fact that you can make big assignment fees, which is incredible, by the way, because you can. But the coolest thing to me is that you are, by wholesaling, by doing wholesaling and learning to do it correctly, you're learning to source real estate opportunities. And you can wholesale those. You can wholesale 3 out of 4 of them, and you can keep one of those 4. And you know that the one of those 4 that you get, if you're underwriting it using the same wholesaling underwriting standards, you're going to get a deep discount on that deal. So you're not going to lose.
Yeah, I really like Ken McElroy. He's been part of the Rich Dad group, and he's who Robert Kiyosaki invests a lot with. And they talk about it all the time. Step number 1, they talk about the 3 skills to develop. Step number 1, find deals. That's the first skill. Step number 2 is raise funds. Step number 3 is property management. But it goes in that order because you can raise so many more funds if you know how to consistently and effectively find the deals. The people that find the deals get paid the most. That's the absolute fact. Whether it's long-term or short-term, if you build the skill, and it is a skill, you have to be able to recognize potential. You have to understand what the fix-up costs or rehab costs on a property are going to be. You have to know what the potential once they are rehabbed is going to be, whether it's for short-term capital gains or long-term cash flow, right? And once you have those skills, everything else gets easier. Raising the funds gets easier. Property management gets easier. But if you try to do it backwards and try to buy all these rental properties while you're still working a 9 to 5 and you're putting all your savings into these properties, what happens when something goes wrong with the property? What happens when the tenant doesn't pay you? What happens when there's some sort of crazy situation where, you're not getting the income coming in, or you've got a big expense that you have to pay for with that property? You're kind of stuck, and it's a rough place. So find the deals. I wish somebody would have sat me down and taught me this in 2000. honestly, Jeremy, because I mean, I watched the explosion of your business and your career, and we'll get to some of the deals and we'll break down some deals here in just a second. But you find the deals, you'll be able to raise as much money as you want, and then you'll be able to really put in great, strong property management for long-term wealth building. But first, build the skill of making money, then build the skill of your money making more money. I think that that's the part that people really get wrong. What do you think?
I agree 100%. And I think kind of what you were saying before, where if you do it backwards, you're going to end up you might end up in the position where you're calling someone like me, and you're ending up selling your property at a discount. That's the last place you want to be. If you're able to make more money just through doing more of your active income generating activities, you can always cover those expenses. Like
Yep.
it's never that big of a problem.
Yeah, I love it. Where'd you grow up?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yep.
And so, was your family one that talked about money? Was there financial literacy? Did you guys go through these conversations? What was that like?
No, I can't remember a single one. And my family wasn't doing bad or anything like that. We grew up in a pretty good working class, middle class family. But everything that I've learned about money and finances, I've basically taught myself within the past 5 years. Because even when I was going through the Marine Corps, and before then, I didn't really, well, to be honest, I didn't really care, which is a problem in itself. But I ended up fixing that around the end of my enlistment, and that's where I gained all of that knowledge just through self education.
What do you mean you didn't care?
Well, I was just your average 18-year-old kid. I was going out partying, having a good time with my friends. And well, to be honest, joining the Marine Corps I wanted to change that. I wanted to do something a little bit bigger than myself. So I did that. But even when I was in the Marine Corps for most of the time, I was mostly focused on just having a good time with my friends. And because you're in that comfortable mindset, right? You're getting, you're going to get paid every couple of weeks. It's the same thing. It doesn't really change. Especially in that environment when you're locked into a contract for, mine was 5 years.
Sure.
So around the end of that, I was like, okay, I'm on my own now. Like I gotta figure this out. And I don't really like the idea of just showing up to a 9 to 5 job for the rest of my life. And then maybe I can retire if the government allows me to. Like I'd rather take it into my own hands.
And that's what made the switch.
Yeah, absolutely.
That made you, hungry for the financial knowledge, essentially. And obviously you found real estate and you had friends doing it, so was it just like you had some friends that were knuckleheads and then you had some friends that were like, oh, you know what, I'm going down this path. It's a different path than what we're doing, and I think it's an exciting path and it's got a future. And was it that type of deal?
Yeah. And I mean, I love all my friends, they weren't all knuckleheads. There are some pretty good guys in there, but yeah, I started talking to my friend. His name's Bruno. When I went home on leave. He's been a childhood friend to me. So he was the one who originally introduced me to the idea. And we started talking very regularly about it. I was like, let's do this together. It makes sense. Like we're already really good friends. We want to do the same thing. We're at the same place in life. And I think that made it a lot easier for me too. If I did it on my own, I might have quit,
Sure.
Doing it with friends really helped, because when things were rough, it wasn't just rough for me. It was rough for him too. And that was huge, hugely impactful. It kept me going for sure.
Well, it's changing your environment. I mean, the fact is, and you could Google it, you could look it up, you can study it from the time you're born to the time you're 7. It really establishes your subconscious. Your subconscious is running 95% of the show. All right. And if that subconscious has not been programmed to think about building businesses or providing value or going out and really pushing towards a lot of really big goals, you have to literally change your environment to be able to change your subconscious. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you can do that, but one of the biggest is changing your environment. So when you change your environment and you're hanging out with Bruno, and Bruno's got these, stars in his eyes, and he's got a game plan, and you're like, okay, let's do this thing. That's all it takes. That's all it
Yep.
takes. That's why I became a teacher. That's why I became an educator. That's why, Wholesaling Inc. and I own Wholesaling Inc. is because all it takes is somebody that is going to put you into a different environment, whether that's a Facebook group that you connect with a lot of people, or Zoom calls, or events that you get together, or you network and you go for coffee or dinner or whatever else. That's the magic. That is the magic. I will tell you, like, without a doubt, you want to get healthy, eat good stuff and exercise, right? You want a successful real estate business, have conversations with property owners and make offers. That's it. It's that simple. There's no magic to it. There's truly no magic to it. It's just that. But if you're not around people that are doing that, it feels very scary. It feels like there's a mystery there. There's a missing piece that you just can't get it over. I just don't know why I'm not talking to the right people and making the right offers and doing the right things and getting really good deals. Well, if you have people in an environment that are helping you and put guardrails up, you win. You win.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
just a fact. That's how you go fast in this thing. So I'll get off my soapbox for a second. It's definitely.
I love it. This is all good stuff.
Every time that I've ever wanted to learn something, I just went and found somebody that already knew it, and saw who they hung out with. You know what I mean? And then you learn that thing. So let's talk
So
about your
huge.
business. You live in St. George, and you're doing deals nationwide.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we're doing right now.
So tell me about that. What do you do for lead generation? How do you find good discounted properties?
So my primary lead source has been cold calling. That's just what's historically worked for me. And I haven't deviated too much from having that as my primary marketing source. We do other things. I mean, this year I've done a ton of testing with different types of marketing strategies. But that's been my main lead source. And really, I've done it myself. That's how I started, by just doing it myself. I think that's super important, by the way, is if you're going to build a wholesaling business, let's say you're someone who's getting into it and you have a lot of money that you can throw at it. I still do not think you should just throw a ton of money at it. You should get in there and make the calls yourself and figure out what it actually takes to talk to homeowners, to understand what's going on in the business. Because let's say you hire someone to go cold call for you. How are you going to know if they're doing a good job or not, unless you've already done it yourself? So that's how I started. And at this point, I've outsourced all of my lead generation. So I have cold callers that will send me leads. And I primarily just follow up with those leads, manage the deals, make offers, and just make sure that they get through to the closing line successfully.
I love it. So do you use a specific company that you hire these callers from?
I've used, so I've split tested a lot of different things. So the first thing that I started when I decided I was going to outsource this was I hired some Philippine cold callers, really cheap. I think it was like $3 or $4 an hour, and I was managing a team of 3 or 4 of them. That was the first thing I tried, and I did not like that. It was a very management intensive. The leads were they ended up being lower quality. But I think I asked you, I was like, Brent, what do you have any good recommendations for me? And you recommended Call Motivated Sellers.
Yeah.
So I've used them, and they've brought me some pretty big deals. So is it more expensive? Oh yeah, big time. But they bring in higher quality leads. I've gotten way bigger assignment fees from some of the stuff that they've sent to me. That I think. And I could be wrong here, but I think if it was someone who's calling them, if you're having someone call you and you answer the phone and it's someone from a different country and you can tell right off the bat, you're automatically going to assume that, oh, this is just, this is just some scam company or something like that. So people hang up the phone all the time. So I can imagine some of those really good deals that we had would have been lost if they were called by someone else. So we've used them, and we've also used no accent callers as well in the past. So that's what we've done, a little bit of everything.
So how do you pick the list that they're going to call if you're focusing nationwide? Do you
Sure.
pick
So
specific markets, or what do you do?
yes, yep, absolutely. So I had my cold callers targeting Tulsa specifically. So I did a lot of research on different markets around the country. I was really interested in Indianapolis, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to pick a market that maybe wasn't so saturated with other people who are in there. Indianapolis is such a good market, by the way, but I think there's a lot of other wholesalers virtually working there. So I wanted to kind of pick a market that is I would personally buy in, and I have now. And I wanted to market specifically to that one, figure it out, and ideally it be a market where there's not a lot of other people working.
Awesome. And so where do you get your lists from to call those markets?
So I've used kind skip tracing, but that's what I've used in the past. But I actually, for no accent callers, they pulled all the lists themselves. So, which was great for me. They had their own dialer and their own lists. So it took away a lot of expenses for me, which is really awesome. That's one thing I really did like about working with them. But before then, I've used kind skip tracing. I've also used batch skip tracing. I think a couple of years ago, but right now I've been mostly sticking with kind skip tracing.
So you can pull the list and get the contact information from Kind Skip Tracing?
Yeah,
Oh,
they have a website, and you just you log in and you put in all the criteria that you want, and they send you a list with phone numbers completely skip traced,
awesome.
usually within a couple hours or 24 hours max.
How long did you call yourself before hiring people?
How long did I call? Oh, I mean, I actually did a lot of, I did primarily SMS blasting. So I did that for a couple of years until things got a little bit, things got a little bit dicey last year, I think, with some of the
Yeah.
regulations. So I quit doing that last year. But pretty much up until then, up until last year, I was doing all of it myself. And actually, I started with doing handwritten letters, but once you send someone a message and they say they're interested, you got to call them. And I remember my first call that I had. It was brutal, and I'm not a natural at this. I was yeah. I was shaking out of my pants when I had got on that first call, and probably the first 10 or 15 calls. But it's repetition, right? You
Yep.
keep doing it and you get comfortable with it, and all of a sudden you're on the phone with someone who you've never talked to before. You're completely comfortable with it. They're grilling you with questions, and you're still able to do it. And you can only do that through repetition. You have to get through that first slog of just it's pretty brutal in the beginning. Once you get past it, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think that is an important distinction. I think between some of the callers that are from out of the country or English is their second language is there's a critical thinking part that you develop, especially if you grew up in the American culture, right? That I think is
Right.
often lost. I think that listen, people have made a fortune off of foreign callers, and I think that if you live here and you have an accent, I wouldn't let that hold you back at all in your efforts of being proactive. It's more
Right.
the critical thinking skills. It's more understanding, what's going on in the country, what's going on in the location that you're calling at. Where do people go and hang out? Where are the malls? Where are the entertainment centers? What is the sports team? What is the local high schools that are really popular, big, or whatever else? You know what I mean? That type of information um, and just being able to fire it off quickly in a conversation matters. It really matters. And I think that that's really the biggest
Yeah.
distinction there. So, I've used call motivated sellers for a long time. It looks like your callers with the no accent callers is something that worked out for you. But if you don't have a budget for it and you can't make the calls yourself, then, you could test them out. It just takes a lot more conversations to get a deal. And
Yeah.
so
And management. You have to
a ton of management,
Yeah,
ton of
yeah. I
management.
mean, if you're hiring, that's what I've realized after starting to outsource this marketing stuff. I spend a lot of time on management. You have to track KPIs, making sure you're not just throwing a bunch of money out the window, because it's really easy to do that if you hire the wrong company or the wrong person. I think that's the most important part when you get to the point where you are spending money for leads to come in, instead of you just going out and doing that yourself.
So you texted me about a big deal you just closed,
Yes.
right? Let's break this thing down.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one actually is in Utah, but I would still classify it as a remote wholesale deal, because I never went there, never saw the property. It's up in northern Utah. I'm down here in southern Utah, and it was a 20 unit apartment complex. So we got this lead from Call Motivated Sellers, actually, at the beginning of the year. And I had talked to the seller originally, I think in February. And, I was breaking down the numbers. And keep in mind, too, this was my first bigger multifamily deal. So I did, I kind of just figured it out as I went. And I'm like, all right, well, who's my end buyer? They're going to be someone who's looking for, multifamily apartments. They're probably going to want a good cap rate. That's what I looked at. And so I started doing, you have to do different calculations, right? With multifamily, you have to figure out cap rate and NOI and all these different numbers. So that's how I got to my initial offer price. So I talked to the guy, and he was initially, he had inherited this property, and he was looking to sell it for, I think, 3.5 million. And it had just he had an appraisal on it. There were 5 different fourplexes, and they had collectively appraised for 3.75. So he's like, all right, well, I'm giving you a discount. Let's do, 3.5. And I was like, no, because rents were low. And there was some deferred maintenance on the property. It wasn't a bad property by any means. Fully rented out, but I had to be at 2.7. So that's a big difference from 3.5. And I think I didn't even tell him the price. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm too low. I'm too low for you, because I don't want to, I don't want to. I guess whenever I make an offer to someone, I try to be respectful about it, because the last thing you want to do is break rapport with them, and they cuss you out or they hang up on you and you never talk to them again. So I don't think I actually even made him an offer at that point, but I knew, I was like, I have to be at 2.7. So he's like, okay, it's too low for you. All right, well, what are you going to offer me? So because he asked, I'm like, okay, we're going to be at 2.7. And he's like, yeah, that's way too low for me. And we went back and forth a little bit more. I was like, let me see if I can bring someone in for you, see if we can find someone to help you get the price that you need. So I talked to one of my friends who does multifamily investing, and he's like, yeah, I mean, we could maybe do 2.8. And I was like, well, 2.7 it is. And I just followed up with him. So that was back in February. We are now in November. So we actually just closed this deal on last week, I think. So, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me. And he texted me a couple months ago. We'd been consistently following up with him, but he texted me a couple months ago, and he said, okay, I'm ready to sell now. I'm like, all right, that's great, but my offer's still at 2.7 million. And he's like, all right, well, that's still a little too low for me. I'm like, okay, well, what can you do? What's your bottom line here? Because I can't do the number that you threw out before. It's just way too high. So he ended up coming down to, I think, 2.9. And I was like, yeah, I mean, let's try it. I told him, I'll try it. Let's see if we can find you a buyer. I'm not going to promise you anything. We'll go under contract, and I'll see if I can find a good, partner to bring in on this who will want to buy it for that price. And so that's where we originally put under contract at. was at 2.9, and we had actually found a buyer who wanted to buy it for 3 million. So, but then he ended up taking his price down a little bit because there was some, the deferred maintenance. He had to do some work there. So he took down his offer to 2.9. And luckily, because I had pre-framed it with the seller that, this wasn't really a for sure thing. Like, we're going to try our best to get you this, but we might have to renegotiate. And because we were committed, we were actually working the deal. He worked with us. So we were able to get the price down to 2.8 million. And that was it. Then we closed on it a couple of weeks ago, and that was a $100,000 assignment fee.
Clean, just $100,000.
Yep, $100,000.
Hold on, let me grab the bell. Hold on. Come on!
Woo! Let's go.
I love it. There it is. I mean, listen, it starts with one conversation, right? It starts with one conversation that you didn't even initially you had your caller have. Turn that lead over to you. You were patient with it. You were a pro. You followed up with them. You built a relationship. And when people trust that you have their best interest in mind and you're working hard for them, they're going to stick with you. And that's exactly what the seller did. And you were able to match that up with the buyer. And I'm sure the buyer is going to make like an absolute mint off of this once it's fixed up and once it is re-rented and the rents are higher. They could probably pull all their money out of that to go put into another deal. It's just a great all around transaction. Great all around deal. So it's how did that feel? How did that feel getting 6 figures wired into your account?
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, it was just like that's a goal that I've been working on for a while now. Because I've seen some of the TTP, the Wholesaling Inc. podcast where people are talking about this. I'm like, I need to get one of these. And I've been working on it for a while. And it just kind of came out of nowhere. I guess it didn't really come out of nowhere, right? Because we were following up with them. And you make your own luck in this business, I think, just by going and finding the sellers, being consistent with follow-up, and just putting your foot on the gas every day. So it felt incredible. And you know what? If you're looking at this from the seller's perspective too, that's, take 6% of the end sales price. And that's more than what I would have made in the assignment fee. So, if you're taking it from that, they also weren't paying, they weren't putting this thing on the market, waiting for it to sell, maybe, having some agent who tried to list it for 3.5, because to be honest, I don't think it would have sold there. I really don't, if they would have put it on the market. So it felt incredible because I think everyone did win in this deal. So it was awesome.
Awesome. Absolutely incredible. Jerry, speak now to people just listening to this for the first time, or maybe, they're at that point where, they're looking at other options in their life. They're looking at different ways to earn income. They're looking at different ways to, elevate the financial status of their family. What advice would you give them starting out?
Well, I was in the same exact spot 5 years ago where I was just thinking about what I wanted to do 5 years ago. And it's been my growth. I mean, I know people who are only listening to this can't see it, but it's gone like that. It was a little bit slow in the beginning. It takes a lot of work and, a lot of hard work and, just a lot of grit in the beginning. Once you get past, that first learning curve, you really can grow in this business exponentially. Once you put some skills into your belt, you can really make a ton of money in real estate. You just have to stay committed. That's all. You just stay committed, stick with it. If you're in this thing for 5 years, you could probably do way better than me, to be honest. I made like every mistake in the book on the way. So anyone can do this. If I can do this, anyone can do this.
Awesome. How can people reach out to you? What's the best way for people to tell you congratulations or maybe want to connect with you? What's the best way?
So you can find me on Facebook, Jeremy Bourgeois. Last name is Bourgeois. It's kind of a tough one. Or you can find me on Instagram, Utah_homebuyer. Or you can just text me 435-236-0689. I'm pretty responsive on all of those. So
Awesome, guys. You got no excuse not to reach out to Jeremy.
that's right.
Especially, listen, if you're coming from maybe a military background and you're looking to take that next step, who better to talk to about what that feels like and what you're going to go through, and all of the challenges and all the exciting adventures that you're going to go on in that process. So definitely reach out to Jeremy. Jeremy, thank you so much for being on here. Congratulations on your first six-figure deal. I know that you've done a tremendous amount of more, you've done a ton of deals, and but the big ones always stick out the most, I think.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
congratulations on that.
Thanks, Brent. And thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. You're amazing. Okay, guys, that is it. That is it for our show. If you're interested in joining the absolute most proactive group in real estate investing, it is the Rhino Tribe with Jeremy, myself, so many others that you've heard on this podcast. Go to wholesalinginc.com, and apply to join the Rhino Tribe. We really look at four main factors. What's your schedule look like? What's your experience level? Where do you live? And what is your budget? And we put together a custom blueprint that works just for you. We've been doing this for over 10 years. We know exactly how to guide you. If you're interested in that, go to wholesalinginc.com. And that is it. My name is Brent Daniels, Mr. TTP, Mr. Talk to People. I love you guys so much. And I encourage you every single day to go out and talk to people. See you next time.